Hello friends, you're with the Lonesome Gamer, and today I'm playing Imperium Romanun 2. The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire by Albert A. Nofi, Nicholas Quain, published by West End Games. And this is another game that you can probably call a real classic. And it's also one of the games about the Roman Empire. And there are not so many games about that compared to the games which are about the Roman Republic. Part of it is probably that there were not too many really big and threatening conflicts. I mean, during the time of the Republic, you have this expansion that you have in sort of Rome, for example, or in Rise of the Roman Republic with the Samnite Wars and Pyrrhus and so on. And then you have the Punic Wars, which were really a threat for the whole existence of Rome. And you have, of course, also games about the Punic Wars, like Carthage or Hannibal. And later on you have, for example, Falling Sky, about the Gallic Wars, simply because it's such a famous war, and it is so well documented. And but then comes this time which is mostly called Pax Romana. The funny thing is, by the way, that the game Pax Romana, which I did just a few weeks or maybe months ago, that game ends basically when the Pax Romana actually starts, and that is when this game also starts. Now this game comes with, I think, 35 campaigns, which cover and 2 introductional scenarios, which cover, as far as I know, really every important conflict of the Roman Empire, starting from the Gallic War, which is technically still under the Roman Republic, until the Roman Empire falls apart and the attempt of Justinian to reconquer it. So let's set it up now. So I've done the setup of the scenario, and here you can see all the different scenarios of the game. I want to do a short one now, and after that I think I want to do a second scenario. But this is more like a, you might call it introductional thing or whatever, and we start with, what was it? Here, the Senate versus Maximinus Thrax. And historical, it was from February 238 to June 238. So not over a very long period, but it might go longer now. So let's go first over the historical situation here. In AD 235, the allegedly able cousin of Septimius Severus, Alexander, was assassinated by his officers. In his place, they proclaimed Maximinus Thrax, 235 to 238. Well, I guess that's not his lifespan. An uneducated physical giant. Well, I've read something different about him. I think he was not that uneducated, but okay, let's stay with this historical view, which is now about, I don't know, 30 or 40 years old. For 3 years, Maximinus held the frontiers against all commerce, but he did so at the expense of domestic popularity. Among other things, he persecuted the Senate. He ignored the Senate. Finally, a revolt broke out in Africa, where the governor, an elderly senator named Gordianus, and his son were proclaimed emperors. The Senate threw in with Gordiani. Loyalist troops from Numidia quickly quashed the rising. Desperate, the Senate elevated 2 of its members, Pupienus and Balbinus, one to command in the field and the other in the house. A popular uprising helped delay Maximinus' forces long enough for some disgruntled officers to assassinate him. Pupienus and Balbinus, reigning briefly, grew suspicious of each other, which resulted in their mutual assassination and the elevation of the third Gordianus. Now began the rule of the infamous Barrack emperors, for within a few years Gordianus III was assassinated and supplanted by Philippus the Arabian. Okay, so that seemed to be the beginning of a pretty chaotic time for Rome. Now basically we have here 2 major powers. We have Maximinus Thrax, and he controls the blue units, and they are mainly here in this area, in the Danube, south of Germany, well, basically in the Danube. And we have a few guys here in Numidia. These are probably these loyal troops. And that's it. The Roman Senate controls the purple troops, and you can already see here, he controls much more. I mean, these are the forces of Maximinus, and these are the forces of the Senate. That's a lot more. He controls the purple troops, which are all the ones here, so the whole western part of the empire. Here in Germania, the Narbonenses, Italia, of course Rome. This is where Pupienus sits, this guy here. Spain, Britannia, all under control of the Senate. Down here in Carthage sits Gordianus, and as it historically happened, it is possible that these loyal troops of Maximinus will move here and kill him. In addition, the Senate controls troops here in the east, and especially here in Syria, Judea, Egypt. Another force here at Melitene. Here, this general controls a big force. There is only one marker there at Nisibis, but it's actually this force here. You can see it's a big stack, completely controlled by that general over there. Now, Maximinus sits actually here. I also separated the marker from the rest of the stack. It's also a pretty big one. And then, yeah, we have his other forces there. In addition, we have a Gothic force, the yellow troops here, and they are controlled by the farthest power, so by the power which is the farthest away from that force, which means by the Senate, so they can be used to also attack Maximinus and give him some trouble. Over here, in this area, are the Persians. You can see all these brown control markers. They indicate provinces they control. In addition, they indicate all this area over there. And they might get activated. We got to roll for them, I think, basically every turn. And under specific circumstances, they might get activated. In addition to that, we have a few barbaric tribes here in Germania Magna, Boiohemum, Jazygia, Dacia, Sarmatia, and they also, and over there in Caledonia Citerior, and these guys also might get activated under specific circumstances. We also play with some special rules, and let me see. As long as the Senate controls Rome, whenever its imperator is eliminated, the player may choose another leader as imperator. The first replacement is Pupienus, but any other leader may be chosen if he is eliminated. Okay, the senatorial units in Germania Inferior and Superior may only move half their normal number of movement points on the first turn. So that's these units here. The Senate may use the green countermix to mobilize combat efficiency rating C units in Italia and Cisalpina. The normal rules apply, except that these operate under the Legion reform rules. No other units in the game do so. Okay. Now, in addition, we have the Civil War rule, which basically says that you win if you're the only one with an emperor left, basically, and you get additional points, morale points, as long as you control Rome. We have the militia rules, which allow you to raise militia in provinces that you control. We have the limitane rules, which were kind of frontier soldiers, garrison soldiers, and that means in frontier provinces, so provinces adjacent to non-Roman provinces, there is a movement penalty of 2 per hex. We have training, which means you get a penalty if you purchase units and you don't place them in a city where there is already a veteran unit that will then train the new purchased units. You basically have to pay double the amount of money if you don't train a unit. We have the barbarian rules. Already said that. The Legion reform by the green senatorial units. The overrun is a special rule used by the Persians. Yeah, okay. That's pretty much it. A player wins by having the sole remaining imperator. The game continues until one player wins. So usually a game can end at the historical date, but in this case we go on until probably the poor Maximinus is killed. I've also filled out the power forms and the mobilization forms, at least partly. These are the provinces controlled by Maximinus. You can see them all here with their tax values. His total tax value is 55. So that's the income he gets when there is a taxation turn. He starts with a treasury level of 13 and a morale level of 80. We'll come to the mobilization form a little later. Here I haven't written down the provinces because there are simply so many and I was too lazy. Basically it's all the rest except for Persia and these northern provinces here. But all Italy, Gallia, Britannia, Hispania, Africa Proconsularis, not Numidia though, but this one here, yeah, basically North Africa from Africa Proconsularis eastward. So also Egypt, Syria, Asia Minor, yeah, the whole area here. These are all under control, also the islands, Crete, Cyprus and all that. These are all under control of the Senate. So I didn't write that down. The Senate has a total tax value of 242 available. So nearly 5 times the income of Maximinus. So that also tells you how the odds of the former emperor are here. The Senate starts with a treasury level of 28, and he also has the higher morale level of 120 against the 80 of Maximinus. Now the Senate at the moment controls the Goths. Maybe I should not have written them down here because they are technically neutral and the control could change or switch to Maximinus if the Senate's units would be closer to the Goths than Maximinus' units, but right now I don't see that. So therefore I've written them here, and basically they have a replacement rate of 0, so that means if Gothic units are killed, they won't come back. And they have a morale of 100, which is more than the morale of Maximinus' troops, but not much more. Okay. If the Persians or some other barbarians should activate, I'm going to write them down a little later because right now only these Goths are active. So I think we're ready to start the game. Now, let me talk a little bit about the map here. So, I mean, no big surprises. We have a map of the area largely under control of the Roman Empire. It's a hex map. Of course, we got sea and coastal areas. The land areas are basically divided into clear, that's the white one. We have forest, the green ones, rough, these brown ones, marsh are the brighter greens. We have desert, the yellow ones. And that's pretty much it. Then we have the rivers here that you can cross. We have these mountains that you're not allowed to cross here in the Alps, these. There are straits, like for example here, that you can't cross. Here it costs you 2 additional movement points. Or here, same here. We have ports marked with these anchors. There are cities, of course, and that is kind of interesting because the game covers such a large time scale that the cities didn't exist, or many cities didn't exist during all the 700 years or whatever the time the game covers here. So the game is divided into 6 different periods. And the arrow indicates now that we are in period number 3. That is also written in the scenario. And now we can take a look at some cities. And some of the cities have specific arrows, like that one, for example. And these arrows indicate during which period the city actually exists. So this city here exists from period number 3 on, when the arrow shows down, into period number 6. But there was kind of a break here, some interruption when the city didn't exist. I don't know what happened there. So I think that, I'm not sure what that actually means. Is it scenario 29 and 31 where it didn't exist or something? I gotta check that. But for now, it's clear that the city existed because this is a clear straight arrow down. That one here, for example, 2, Delminium, also exists in the 3rd era. Now the cities that don't have any arrows, like for example Lissus, they exist during the whole game. And let me see if we find a city that doesn't exist yet. Not that easy. I think during this time of the game, I think this one here, Herminium, that seems to only exist in scenario number 10. Oh no, it's not, it's Bremenium, if I understand that right. Yeah. Okay, so I guess you get the idea how that works with the cities. So in this period, I guess basically all the cities, look at that, Tomi here for example, that seems to exist from 11 on, but not at the beginning of the 3rd period. So as I said, in this scenario, most of the cities seem actually to exist. Some over here I see don't. For example, Pasargade, that only exists from scenario 5 and so on. Okay. Okay, so much about the cities. Now it gets a little more complicated because also the infrastructure changed during this big time span, and this is reflected in the rules as well. Now let me see, I need to find here, oh, this is just the charts and tables, that's not what I want now. I need to find the I know where it is. Okay, now here's the rule book, and at the back of the rule book, there we are. Here is actually, there are these maps, the province status maps. And they indicate, well, the status of the provinces in the different periods. As you can see here. And we're now in period 3, but scenario 11. So it's actually this map here. And there you can see now, and it's actually not, that's a good thing. It's pretty uniform. I mean, not completely, but the white provinces, all the white provinces, so all the provinces around the Mediterranean, except for Western North Africa, they are all cultivated and they have roads. That makes movement and foraging easier. Here in Eastern North Africa, this is a little darker, it's hard to see here on the camera, I guess, as well as here, which is, I think it's Dacia, and here in these eastern areas there are no roads, but it is still cultivated. Now here in these northern areas, which is Germania, Boiarhaemum, and so on, there are no roads and it's still wild. So the cultivation is important for foraging and the roads are important for movement. In this case, it's not so hard to remember that. For example, in the first period, it really sucks because, you know, only on these small areas it's cultivated and you have roads. Then here you have wild but roads. Here you have no roads. Now, if you play a game, even in just a few provinces around the Mediterranean, there are lots of different status of the provinces there, which makes it much harder. Here it's still a little, but it becomes easier and easier when time goes on, I think. Only in period 6 then, when the empire falls apart, it gets more complicated again. Okay, so as I said, around the Mediterranean, most of it roads cultivated, and only up here we have to check a little bit. But there again we can basically remember that only Dacia seems to be, if I'm not mistaken there, yeah, that seems to be Dacia. That's the only one which has no roads and is cultivated, while the other northern provinces have no roads and are wild. So if I can remember that, I'm basically fine, but I know I have to look that up again and again. Another important aspect of the game are the seasons. Now we can see here, each turn is a month. We start here in February, and the blue ones are winter. And in April and November we have to roll if it still counts as summer or as winter. The yellow ones are then obviously summer. Now that has an impact on movement and on forage options. Therefore, we will definitely see the big campaigns, if there are big campaigns here, during summer and not during winter, because it's more or less impossible to move big armies in a reasonable speed and yeah, during winter. It's really hard to do. Now these symbols here, the sun symbol, the stylized sun here, that shows that in these areas it's always summer. North Africa and here the Near East, that's where it's always summer. The rest we have these seasonal effects. So, some of the turns are these turns here, the mobilization turns. We see them only in March, June, September and December. And only during these turns, these two white phases, the taxation and mobilization and the random events, come into effect. In the other months, we only have these red colored phases. So we start with the diplomacy phase. Now there will be no negotiations between the players because they're enemies. Otherwise you could do alliances or something during that phase. But what we have got to do is we have to check if the Persians will activate. During each diplomacy phase, roll 2 dice. If the roll is 5 or less, Persia becomes active. Add 1 to the die roll for each 25 strength points of Roman units in Cappadocia, Syria and Osrhoene. Okay, on a 2 they always will activate. Now where is that Osrhoene? I have no... that one. It's this one, right? So there is... that's all these guys. Yeah, okay. So that's a lot. I've already counted the ones in Syria and in Cappadocia, and we've already have nearly about 100 or so. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to roll 2 dice and then check the result. Pretty sure if we'll roll higher than a 2 or 3, basically higher than a 2, they won't activate. And yeah, okay, so they don't. And let me see about the barbarians. If we have to check for their activation too, there we are. Yeah, roll a die for each of the 3. No, wait a second. There we go. That a Roman province adjacent to any of the above provinces does not contain at least 20 land combat strength points of Roman units. Roll for each barbarian province adjacent to the Roman province. On a 5 or 6, the barbarian power becomes active. Okay. Okay, fine. So let's see. Over here. Okay, there are 20 in there, so we don't have to roll. Here, there are definitely also 20. Here, we also see 20 here. In there, we have here 20. There. Yeah, no problem here. Okay, so we don't have to roll here. And by the way, these are the different units, and on the left, you see the strength points. So here it's 20. On the right, you see the movement points, 10. The leaders, these guys, they show on the left their, well, let's say tactical rating, and on the right, they show the movement points. The fleets, they also show on the right the movement points, and on the left it's the transport capacity. And that shows how many stacking... No, that is not true. Nah, that's bullshit. I guess it's also the combat strength then. Okay. Yep, so we're done with the diplomacy phase. Nothing happens here. And now the first player starts. We always follow the player order that is here. So the first player in this case is Maximinus Thrax, because he's listed first. And then the second player is the Senate. And he could do now, in theory, his naval operations, but because he controls no fleet, that's not going to happen. So then we come to the land movement. And let's see if we have a plan what we want to do. Okay, so there's a lot about money in this game, obviously. And we see here the tax value chart. And it also depends on the periods and on the scenarios. So this is here scenario 11, still a little bit in period 3. And here we can see the tax values of the different provinces. And when we take a look here, the valuable provinces would be Africa Proconsularis, Egypt, but we're not going to get that, Asia, and that is one within reach. I definitely want to take that out. Cisalpine and Italy. So if we can take these two, that would be great. And these are nearly the most valuable ones that are a reasonable goal. I mean, the others are, you know, Babylon or something could be interesting, but I don't want to get there, I guess. Syria is also a pretty awesome one, but that's too far away too. But, you know, Asia is not heavily guarded. We can simply march over here. And then, as I said, Cisalpine and Italy. Maybe we can take Rome. It's going to be hard. It's very unlikely, but we must have a goal. I mean, otherwise we could simply run into the Russian woods and hide there. That would be probably the most reasonable thing to do if we want to stay alive. But if we want to die as an emperor, we're going to go for Asia and Italy. So, you control a province. If you control the capital city, which is the one written in capitals, so in Asia it would be Ephesus, and at least half the city of the provinces. So, for example, Smyrna, Sardis, Ephesus, that would be good enough to control Asia, I guess. I'm not sure what about that one. Probably we also need this one or another one then. Okay. So I wonder if it is possible to cross that strait if the fleet is there. Okay, actually the fleet will not block me from crossing that strait. The fleet can also fight a land combat in a coastal sea area, which is kind of strange. And its combat rating is then reduced to a fourth of the standard combat rating. Therefore, they better try to sail away and not to block me here. Apart from that, I want to try to kill this leader here. So therefore I might move these guys. And it's summer, so I can show you how the movement works here, for example. Okay, we got here. First of all, we have a number of stacking points. And we see here in this charts and tables, we see here the stacking points. So for example, heavy infantry has 4, heavy cav 8, light cav 2, light missile infantry 1. Okay, so we have now here, this is heavy infantry, so they have 4 stacking points. Light makes it 5, and these. So we are here at 7 then. The leader doesn't count. So this army has 7 stacking points. Now, we've seen that Numidia is, I think it was, and there we are again. I think it was wild, wasn't it? No, that's still, yeah, that's still cultivated with roads. Okay, so we got to check the forage chart now, and it is summer because here is always summer. So we check now, for example, here in a cultivated area during summer in the rough, there can be 12 stacking points. Okay, so we're fine with these guys. And basically the supply phase comes after the movement phase. You can see that here. But I do that usually during the movement phase, simply because I don't want to check every stack after the movement phase. I simply move and then see, am I fine or not? And now we got to check how far we can move. Well, these guys could move 16, have 60 movement points, but the slowest one here, my heavy infantry, has 10 movement points. So I think we're going to go with these. Technically, we're not allowed to see what is in here. So let's see, we can, it's summer and there are roads. So let's see, we have here provinces with roads, and there we have provinces without roads. And we have summer and we have winter. So it's basically this column here which is relevant here. So here a rough costs us only 1.5 points to move. So that means we can move here 1.5, 3, 4.5. Then we come into clear terrain and we can see it's only half a point. So that's 5. And now we can see here, okay, because they don't have cavalry, and I do have cavalry, they are not allowed to retreat before combat. So that means they have to remain here. Otherwise they could try to run away. If you have double the cavalry as your opponent has, then this prevents him from retreating. In this case, because they don't have anything, I think 1 cavalry unit is good enough for me. So we're going to attack here, and after the movement phase we then come first to the supply phase, then to the land combat phase. I'm not sure about that, to be honest. I think that doesn't make a lot of sense, and I'm not going to do it that way. And it's the same thing here with the taxation, mobilization, and the random events. I think the random events should come before the taxation, simply because there are many random events that affect taxation. So if you do your taxation first, and then the random event, you have to do it all backwards again, which doesn't make any sense. So in this case, it's clearly reasonable to do the random events first and then the taxation. And I have a feeling that we have a problem here too. I want to do land combat first and then supply. The reason is simple, because otherwise you could simply say, I have a stack of units to the forage, to the maximum forage value of the hex. And then it's impossible for someone else to attack me, because the rules say that the enemy's supply value is subtracted from my own, or the enemy forage value, or whatever. Basically, that the enemy also has to forage from the hex, from the same hex as I do. So if they are already at the maximum and I move in, my units will die right away. So you could never attack. You couldn't prevent an attack if you are at the forage maximum in a hex. And that doesn't make any sense to me. The only way to attack would be with a baggage train. You could bring your own supply with you, and there are some, I think, for example, these here, yeah, that's a baggage train, but you can see the problem here on the right. The baggage train only has a movement allowance of 4. So basically, in many spaces, you can only move 1 or 2 spaces with such a baggage train. So to attack other units becomes extremely hard, nearly impossible. And I think that is not intended. Therefore, I'm going to do it that way, that we do the battle first, and then we see if my units can forage from the area. If it's not possible because there are too many or something, the units get eliminated. That's how I'm going to play it. I tried it the other way around. I hated it. It was a stupid game. I'm going to play it that way. Okay, we will come to the battle a little later here. Now let's see what else we can do. As I said, I want to move here to Asia. I want to try to take this area out. But I guess I need a bigger force here in Italy, because we might have to face all these guys up there. They might also march against me. Of course, I mean, sooner or later, I will have to face these troops too, so, I mean, but who cares? I'm in trouble anyway. So I think for now, I'm just going to take a small force here, with a single general maybe. Well, it's hard to tell, you know, it really is. Maybe I don't even want a general. Okay, and I'm gonna go not so into detail during later videos, but right now I want to do it. So they also have a maximum of 10, a movement maximum of 10. So if they enter here, it would be... wait a minute, this is now winter. Yeah, exactly, we're no longer in Africa. This is winter. That changes things significantly. So I think with a movement value of 10, we could end up in a cultivated, clear area which can still support 16 units during winter. Remember, Mysia, Inferior and Thrace, they are both cultivated and have roads. That means with roads in winter it takes us 3 to cross the Rough here. So that is 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's then basically 9 if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that these poor guys will die once the Roman force come, but maybe I can slow them down a little bit and take Asia out. And you know what, in addition, I think I want to go here to Constantinopolis or Byzantium, and I'm not sure that exists, by the way, because here, yeah, between scenario 10 and 16, that city actually doesn't exist. You can see that here there is a gap between the end of period 3 and the beginning of period 4, and the numbers indicate that between 10 and 16 the area, that city doesn't exist, which is a shame because I wanted to bring some units in there to kind of fortify in there and to prevent the eastern units from coming to Europe, but in that way it's going to be very hard. Okay, just to give you an impression how hard it is to move in the winter, if there are no roads. Here, for example, in Dacia, there are no roads right now. And if we want to move from one rough to another rough space, that will cost it actually 6 movement points. Now these guys only have 10, respectively 12. So that were the first 6. And then we can continue here into this clear area. These are 3 more, so we're at 9, and this is it then. And we have with these guys 5 stacking points. It's a clear area in the wild, so that gives us a forage value of 8. So yeah, we're fine, we're in supply there. Okay, here you can see now how that big army of Maximinus had to spread out to be able to forage in this area. I mean, they have a baggage train, which is underneath here. It's this one here. And that dot here indicates that it is full. So we could start depleting that baggage train. If we flip that marker, then we got to remove that marker, then we can flip this. So I think each baggage train can be used 5 times in the end until it is completely depleted. And one of these uses actually provides stacking points, 32 stacking points with food. So therefore, damn it, it's not that easy. Therefore, we could actually feed our whole army, but because right now I'm pretty sure that the enemies cannot reach us. Here they cannot make it over the mountains in the next turn. So our army doesn't have to remain together. They can spread out, live off the land, and then if we come closer to the enemy army, we can build a big stack and use our baggage train to provide them with food. Okay, so I guess we can... No, I think that's actually it. I think we moved all our units now. On our way to Asia, to Rome, and here. And now we come to the combat phase, and the only combat that will happen is this one here. And actually these 2 guys they sit in Carthage, so they are going to accept siege there. Okay, now what does that mean? Well, we could now either besiege these guys, or during the siege resolution step, which will be the next one then. I mean, we don't have any land combat. Next one is then the siege resolution step. We could attack that city, we could assault it, and I think that is something I want to do, because I'm definitely stronger than these guys. but I gotta check it. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna do an assault here. A siege would be really hard because this is a port. It's a big city. I think that also is important. It's summer, there's always summer. These are all factors which make a siege much harder, and therefore I don't think I want to do that. But there's only this light infantry in there. The only problem is that it's a big city, and that gives them some additional points. Now let's see. Boy. Let's see what the intrinsic strength of that city is. I think it's 4 or something. Cities, there we are. Blup, blup, blup. No, it's 3. Okay. So that means the city has a strength of 3. Now, if you do an assault, then the combat value of the troops inside the city is doubled. Now, because here in Africa Proconsularis there is deforestation, it is tripled because it's harder for the Romans to build siege engines in areas where there is deforestation. Therefore, these guys have a combat strength of 12, plus 3 makes it 15. Cavalry is halved during an attack. So that means we have 3, 7. That indicates that it's a kind of a bow unit, right? So we got 3, 7, and 23 versus 15. So let's see, we come now to the combat chart, which is here. This is an optional combat chart that is maybe a little more realistic. Okay, 23 versus 15. Okay, I think we are pretty much on the 3-2 column here. So let's see what the modifiers are. Basically, there are modifiers for the leaders, but they have both a +1 tactical rating, so they cancel each other out. And honestly, there we go, the combat die roll modifiers. Then we have the combat efficiency rating. Okay, now in the setup, in the scenario description, it says that the blue have all a combat efficiency rating of A. I think that the purple ones also have a combat efficiency rating of A. Yeah, exactly, over there. That's basically as good as it gets. So therefore there's also no modifier there. And then we got a per 50 points of morale difference. That's not the case either now. We could boost our morale by spending money. The problem is, if I do that, the others can also spend money and so on, and I cannot outbid the Senate. So I think I don't want to do it. I mean, they of course could spend money. But at the moment nobody has such a big treasure, by the way. So I think right now nobody actually wants to spend money here. We're all happy. So there is no difference. We simply roll on the table without any modifiers, and then we see what happens. So it's this column here. Roll a die. Okay, that's a 5. That's bad for the defender, I guess. Okay, that is a 5, so there we go. 3-2. Okay, that means the ones on the right, these are the defender's forces. They have an E, which means they are eliminated. The ones on the left show the attacker's forces. Because they are bold, written that says they are the winners. In addition, they take half the losses of the defender because of this half D. Okay, so in the end, now the defender loses this. Wait a second. So Maximinus will lose half the unmodified forces that the defender loses. So they lose these guys at 4 strength points here. So that means he would lose 2, but because that's impossible, he chooses to lose 4 then. And these guys go away. And the leader here is also killed. So for now, we follow the historical path. And we control now Carthage. Now that gives us a few morale points. And wait a minute, we can check here the morale chart. We've won a combat. This gives us 2 points. The other guy will lose 2 morale points. Okay, stacking, that evens each other out because we both lost a light infantry. But they lost control of a province, and that is Africa Proconsularis, which has 19, a tax value of 19. So they will lose 19. The Senate loses 19 morale points, and that is important because that will probably push their forces over the edge. Or is that so? No, actually that's not true, because they were the ones which had the higher points. Yeah, they were at 120. Okay, and in addition, they lose a named leader. And that is 1 plus the value minus 2 times 1 plus the value. So that means 4. 1 plus the value is 2 plus, and that 2 times, so that's 4. That means they lose another 8. The other guy gain 8 for doing that. I don't think that the leader counts as an imperator, although I'm not sure, maybe he does. If he was the imperator, then we might actually gain much more. Let's see. The Senate, Gordianus, he seems to have been the imperator. Yeah, that's true. So that means it's much more. It's minus 10 times 2. So that's another 20 actually. And plus 20 for the other guy. Okay. Yes. Okay. So let me calculate all that stuff. So I think, if I wasn't mistaken here, the forces of Maximinus they've won 22, and the other guys lost 41 because they've lost control of Africa Proconsularis. But that is not that is not under the control of Maximinus yet. So right now nobody controls that. So that means that Maximinus has now a morale level of 102, while the other guys are at 79. So it's not such a big significance here, or such a big difference. Now the new imperator is Pupienus, the guy here in Rome, and that's now the end of the player turn of Maximinus. And I guess at that point I'm going to load that up, and we're going to do the Senate's turn in the next video here. So hope to see you then, or on lonesomegamer.com. Bye.